Hello everyone. Welcome to Mind Podcast Buddhism. Today we will talk about the topic, Practicing the Bodhisattva Path, a simple guide for beginners. On the Bodhisattva Path, it's important to avoid negative influences and cultivate positive relationships. Bad friends and external enemies often reflect our inner negativity. If being around someone increases your anger or jealousy, it's best to distance yourself. To grow spiritually, choose relationships that boost your love, compassion, and wisdom. Reflect on your interactions. If your negative emotions increase and compassion decreases, it's a sign to reevaluate that relationship. Aligning with the Bodhisattva Path helps build a life of true happiness and enlightenment. Vowing to practice the Bodhisattva Path, the Buddhas, the enlightened ones who have attained perfect fulfillment, are the source of all happiness and benefit for sentient beings. They achieved enlightenment through the practice of the Dharma and dedicating their entire lives to this noble path. It is essential for us to have a comprehensive understanding of the practice and conduct in order to fully live according to the Dharma. Therefore, I would like to provide a brief explanation of the practice for those embarking on the Bodhisattva Path. The first verse praises the Supreme Teacher Avalokiteshvara. Why Avalokiteshvara and not Buddha Shakyamuni or other bodhisattvas? Because Avalokiteshvara is the Buddha embodiment of great compassion. His essence is compassionate mind, which is fundamental to all Buddhas. There is no Buddha who does not possess compassion, and no path to Buddhahood that does not involve cultivating the great qualities of compassion. Therefore, we revere and pay homage to the Buddha as the embodiment of compassion rather than to any other Buddha or Bodhisattva. Nagarjuna teaches that compassion is like watering the fields when cultivating crops, when the plants begin to sprout, and even when the trees are growing. Similarly, compassion is crucial for a practitioner from the very beginning of their spiritual journey until they progress to the stages of the 10 grounds. Even upon attaining Buddhahood, great compassion remains the foundation for all beings. Therefore, compassion is needed at the initial, intermediate, and final stages of the spiritual journey. Due to the importance of great compassion, we take refuge in Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion. As ordinary sentient beings still full of ignorance, we lack the wisdom to directly realize true compassion. Thus, the external forms of Avalokiteshvara in Thangka paintings or other images help us easily visualize him. The external forms of a compassionate deity or a peaceful deity are manifestations of great compassion. This special work guides the deeds to be done or not done by bodhisattvas. The instructions are extremely clear. The work was composed by a Tibetan bodhisattva, Nolchu Togmed Zanpo, 1245 to 1369, a master of scriptures and logic. He deeply realized true compassion. The work he kindly gave us originates from his enlightened mind. Although this text teaches the 37 practices of the bodhisattvas, it is essential for anyone seeking true happiness. Essentially, we all are bodhisattvas, but due to ignorance, we are not yet perfect bodhisattvas. Even though many of us have vowed to take the bodhisattva precepts, we belong to the Mahayana Buddhist tradition and even claim to be Vajrayana practitioners. However, if we do not fully understand the Mahayana, how can we realize the Vajrayana? It is impossible. Therefore, whether we are perfect bodhisattvas or not, we still need to practice according to the guidance in this text. These 4 verses are a promise of the potential to realize Buddhahood, but to achieve this, practice is necessary. Buddha nature is inherent in all sentient beings, but achieving Buddhahood requires practice. No Buddha has attained enlightenment without practice. That is why this Dharma teaching is given. It is important to know that all Buddhas have attained enlightenment by practicing the Dharma correctly and steadily. All sentient beings have Buddha nature, so we all have the potential for enlightenment, but without special skillful means, the path to enlightenment, despite our efforts, will be full of obstacles and difficulties. These instructions are extremely important and essential. The Bodhisattva Path, or following in the footsteps of the Bodhisattvas, is the fundamental practice for achieving enlightenment. The Bodhisattva Path is the path of compassion. Whatever we do, whatever we say, it must stem from love and compassion. This means we must avoid selfishness and stay away from ego clinging. Some may ask me about the relationship between heaven and the Buddhas. Speaking of the Buddhas, we are not referring to the intrinsic Buddha nature, but rather to sentient beings who have attained Buddhahood. We refer to individuals like you or me, ordinary people, who have achieved enlightenment through practicing the Buddha's path. There have been millions of sentient beings who, through diligent and proper practice of the Dharma, have become Buddhas or enlightened bodhisattvas. To achieve this, we must practice like them. No Buddha is granted Buddhahood by heaven. No Buddha has attained enlightenment from the beginning. No one happens upon enlightenment without practice and following the Dharma path. When speaking of the Buddha, there are two concepts. Buddha nature is a completely different concept from what I am discussing here. Buddha nature is the true nature, the Dharmakaya, or the essence of all things. Meanwhile, Buddhas, those who have attained enlightenment like Buddha Shakyamuni or Amitabha and other Buddhas, as well as bodhisattvas like Milarepa, many bodhisattvas in India like Padmasambhava, all of them have practiced and attained enlightenment and liberation. None of them descended from heaven without practice. This can give us hope that if we follow the true practice of the Dharma, one day we will achieve enlightenment like them. And there is no reason why this cannot become a reality. Enlightenment can be achieved in this lifetime and even within 1 or 2 years, but we need proper guidance. When mentioning the qualities of the Buddhas, there are two important qualities: self-benefit and benefiting others, which they have perfected. First, they have fully cultivated love, compassion, understanding, and wisdom. Second, their power can help all sentient beings through compassion via the Dharma and other skillful means. Without realization, they cannot save sentient beings. We need to recognize these two achievements. These are the two most important qualities of a Buddha. Now I will briefly explain the activities of the Bodhisattvas. Buddhas have countless qualities, among which two important qualities are self-realization and helping others. First, they have fully cultivated love, compassion, understanding, and wisdom. Second, their power can help all sentient beings through compassion via the Dharma and other skillful means. Without self-realization, they cannot truly save sentient beings. What does the practice of the Bodhisattvas include? Bodhisattvas are called the children of the Buddha, meaning the sons and daughters of the Buddha. The Buddha has children born from his body, speech, or mind. Bodhisattvas are the spiritual children born from the Buddha's mind. The Arahants, great practitioners of Theravada Buddhism, are the spiritual children born from the Buddha's speech. Historically, when the Buddha was a prince, he had a son named Rahula who was born from his body. When we talk about the actions or practices of the Bodhisattvas, we are referring to the Dharma. The Dharma is the practice of the Bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas represent the Sangha, while the Buddha is the embodiment of the Dharma. The Buddha is the one who proclaimed the Dharma. When we talk about practicing the Dharma, we mean following the path of true Dharma. Genuine Dharma practice needs to be nurtured and applied in various ways. The three vehicles of Buddhism, Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, are entirely based on the innate potential and understanding of each individual. This may initially seem like comparing first-class, second-class, or third-class carriages on a train, but it is not. We often understand Vajrayana as the fastest vehicle, akin to first class, while Mahayana is grand but not as fast, and Theravada Buddhism is the slowest vehicle, almost like walking. In reality, it is not so. The practice you follow entirely depends on the inherent predispositions within you. If you have the seeds for Vajrayana, you will practice Vajrayana. If you have the seeds for Theravada Buddhism, you will follow Theravada. If you have the seeds for Mahayana, you will follow Mahayana. However, you need to be dedicated to the chosen path, merging with it, allowing you to transform towards your enlightened nature. Choosing which vehicle to follow, be it Theravada, Mahayana, or Vajrayana, depends on your inherent capacities and your practice. As your practice evolves, you will naturally find the method that best suits you. The development I am referring to here is the development of your own self. For example, your cultivation of compassion, or the essence of Buddhism. If you can cultivate genuine and strong compassion, nothing can hinder your progression to a higher vehicle. Thus, the path to Buddhahood is through cultivating love, compassion, and empathy. Buddhahood is not reserved for some people while excluding others. No, Buddhahood is entirely free and available to all sentient beings, regardless of nationality, gender, or any other dualistic criteria. The only certain exception is that Buddhahood is not for those who do not practice. I say this because when discussing great masters like Milarepa or other great achievers, people often think they can never achieve like these masters. I always expect people to ask, how can we follow this path to achieve what they did? This is what everyone should be concerned about, but few know how to ask. They talk about their understanding as if these masters suddenly appeared from nowhere. We are not extraordinary. How can we be like them? We dare not hope to be like them. This lack of confidence discourages people from entering the Dharma. It is a mistake to think we cannot be like them. Thoughts like, we are full of impurities, desires, anger, jealousy, how can we be like them, are thoughts limited by ignorance. In fact, we will never progress on the spiritual path if we carry such an inferiority complex. Conversely, we must encourage ourselves, believing we can fully attain enlightenment. We need a confident and optimistic attitude. Indeed, we need to follow the true Dharma because this is extremely important, which is explained in this text. If we did not have the potential for enlightenment, why would we practice? Why would we study the Dharma like this? And if we did not have great potential, why would we be given this text? First of all, if the destination of the journey were not enlightenment, all these teachings would be mere theoretical discussions that we do not need. If there were no possibility of enlightenment, why would we need to know about the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha? Instead, it would be better to stay in samsara happily and do something else. If there were no hope of becoming a Buddha, becoming a great being, if the potential for enlightenment were not real, why would we make efforts? In fact, the Dharma has been given to us because we have great potential to attain enlightenment in this very lifetime. By following the true Dharma, we can be like the great masters we mentioned here. Therefore, you have the right to hope, and not just hope, but firmly and steadfastly believe that you will achieve like them. We have every reason to be completely confident and optimistic. The potential is already there because we are fortunate to have this human body, the precious human life, and the opportunity to practice the Bodhisattva Path. The first verse of the 37 practices of the Bodhisattvas is particularly important, as it refers to human life as a precious boat that helps us cross the river of samsara and ignorance. All we need to do is step onto this boat and learn how to navigate it. This requires skillful means, so we must practice the Dharma day and night, not wasting a single moment of this precious human life. To attain enlightenment, we truly should not waste even a second, as every moment of our lives is incredibly valuable. Precious human life. In this lifetime, we are fortunate to have a human body, a great boat with 18 rare conditions. To quickly escape the great ocean of samsara filled with suffering, day and night, we should strive diligently without laziness, listening, reflecting, and meditating the practices of a bodhisattva. We have obtained this precious human life, which is truly a great favorable condition. The verse likens human life to a boat, and we already have this boat. Samsara is like a vast ocean or a wide river full of dangerous waves that we must cross. The sea of suffering is vast and immense, but we have a boat. Without such a boat, we would certainly be in utter despair. So the only thing we need to do is step onto this boat and learn how to navigate it. This requires skill, and we must practice diligently day and night, not wasting a single moment of this precious human life. Practice listening. We also need to have intellectual knowledge and experiential knowledge. Intellectual knowledge comes first, hence listening to and contemplating the Dharma is very necessary. If you do not listen or are not close to a teacher, this will be difficult. A teacher is extremely important. You need to listen to the true Dharma proclaimed by a true teacher. After listening, you need to contemplate the Dharma. You need to think a lot, very thoroughly, and repeatedly about these teachings. Before you can have experiential knowledge, this is essential. Almost every Buddha, every Bodhisattva, every saint, or master who has attained Buddhahood and enlightenment did so by listening to the Dharma from a true teacher. Without the guidance of an enlightened teacher, we would have no way to attain enlightenment. At the initial level, we do not really understand compassion, suffering, or enlightenment because we are completely ignorant. Therefore, to awaken ourselves, listening to the Dharma from a teacher is truly necessary. Practitioners taking the Mahayana Bodhisattva vows need to practice actions such as listening, contemplating, and meditating with the motivation to liberate all sentient beings. Many people have no faith but still listen to what the teacher teaches, yet their motivation is not truly right. They do not do it for the benefit of all sentient beings. This is a very crucial point. Foundation of true motivation. On the path of practicing the Bodhisattva's deeds, practitioners must always develop, maintain, and nurture a genuine motivation, not only when listening to or contemplating the Dharma in meditation, but even during seemingly unrelated activities like going to the bathroom or spitting. All these actions should be dedicated to the benefit of all sentient beings. Spitting is a small and often disregarded act, but it can be very beneficial to many beings, such as hungry ghosts or wandering spirits who have nothing to eat and own nothing due to their bad karma. However, with true motivation, if you spit and dedicate it to these beings, it can still benefit them. Remember that on the Bodhisattva Path, anything you do, no matter how simple, such as entering a room, should be for the benefit of sentient beings. You need to think, I am entering this room for the benefit of all sentient beings. May at least one being benefit from my entering and leaving this room. Every action, whether sleeping or talking, should be dedicated to all sentient beings in this way. Everything can become a subject of meditation. There are many levels of meditation, such as analytical meditation and resting meditation. When we begin to contemplate compassion or something related to the world, the teacher, devotion, true love, and worldly affection, this is analytical meditation. This is not simply sitting and being silent. It is a form of meditation, but it is not the only form. To avoid wasting any moment of this precious human life, we can use our energy to contemplate through analytical meditation. This can be done without formal rituals, at work, or in your daily life. During these times considered outside of formal practice, you can reflect on yourself. You can think about the Dharma. You can contemplate impermanence and other aspects of the teachings. For example, impermanence. Think about how impermanence is always evident. When you see the sun rises because of impermanence, not for any other reason. The sun set last night and rises this morning. Why is that? Because the sun is moving, and that is impermanence. The earth is moving, so the sun rises. Time is flowing. The movement shows the flow of time or impermanence. This is truly a great teaching. If you know how to receive it as a teaching, it is analytical meditation, and even if you do nothing, you have truly used this experience in a very meaningful way, like a form of meditation. There are informal and formal meditation practices. I think at our level, informal meditation is more beneficial, but first, you need to listen to the Dharma. Otherwise, you will not know how to meditate informally. This is very valuable, and listening is the first basic step. Then when you start thinking about the Dharma, that is when you start analytical meditation. In many cases, when we practice formal meditation, sitting silently, we tend to lose ourselves, not truly aware of what is happening around us, and then we waste the time meant for meditation, thinking of ourselves as meditators or practitioners. In reality, we are not meditating, we are lost somewhere. In this respect, informal meditation, like seeing the sun rise and thinking of impermanence, or hearing people talk about their sufferings and reflecting on the suffering of samsara, its arising and functioning, may seem simple, but you are using your energy and brain correctly. This is more meaningful and beneficial than losing yourself in misguided formal meditation. You should also find a way to turn every moment, every change, every thought, and every phenomenon happening inside and outside of you into true Dharma. This Dharma is 100, 1,000 times more precious than the Dharma you hear. Of course, at the beginning, oral transmission of the Dharma is essential, but to push this understanding, I think it is better to find the Dharma in everything happening around us. If you can do this, it is the key to the Bodhisattva Path and a crucial part of Bodhisattva practice. The foundation or essence of Bodhisattva practice is analytical meditation at all times, day and night, practicing like this day and night without wasting a moment. The longest formal meditation can only last a few hours a day, and all the remaining time not practicing is wasted. Thus, your life and practice opportunity will pass by in vain. To liberate all sentient beings and reach nirvana, you need to be extremely diligent and dedicated. To begin practicing the Bodhisattva Path, you need to listen to the Dharma, contemplate, and reflect. This is how you begin meditation. This is the message for the initial practice. Practicing inner detachment. With affection for loved ones, the mind is entangled in attachment. Passions surge like waves in the body. Anger and resentment burn like fire. With those we dislike, our minds become spiteful. Ignorance forgets the true Dharma, and so we continue in the cycle of grasping and clinging. Now, let go of the attachments of the homeland. Practice detachment as a true Buddhist. There is a type of insect whose name I do not recall, which can secrete an incredibly adhesive saliva from its mouth. This saliva gradually covers its entire body, eventually resulting in the insect being killed by its own saliva. They cause this to themselves. I do not know why this happens, but it is karma. We often use this example because it closely resembles what we are doing. We chain ourselves with attachments until we do not know how to move anymore. Moreover, we are left with no options. Whether we are burned by the fire of anger, immersed in the sea of desire, or overwhelmed by hatred, we always suffer. And eventually we may realize this, but by then it is almost impossible to break free. The practice of detachment is an extremely subtle and profound teaching, not easily discussed. To achieve detachment, one must be either very wise or very naive. Those in between find it difficult to accomplish. Most naive individuals are trying to start. For instance, some from the West or modern, advanced countries like Japan, upon hearing that detachment is important, abandon everything and leave. They act as if they are practicing detachment, but in reality they are only sinking deeper. They might try going to India. Usually the most suitable places are India or Nepal because living costs are not too high. With $100 they can live decently and happily for 3 months, believing they have truly detached. But that is not the way to detach. Detachment must be accompanied by wisdom or inner understanding. True detachment must arise from real understanding, not in the way I just described. Detachment must go hand in hand with non-attachment. Non-attachment must originate from inner detachment, inner release, understanding deeply what detachment and non-attachment are. External detachment is necessary, but more important is inner detachment and non-attachment. This is what we lack. As practitioners of the Dharma, we must focus on this no matter what we are doing. For instance, those who go to Nepal and think they are practicing detachment may only live there because life is not too expensive and is easy. I'm not saying that everyone who does this is meaningless, but the core issue is whether they truly detach completely or for other reasons. Such questions should not even arise because detachment must be genuine, true release. Inner detachment must be cultivated first, then external detachment may or may not follow, depending on circumstances. Inner detachment must be cultivated through understanding emptiness, such as the existence of a house. In the scriptures, it is said that to attain liberation, a bodhisattva practitioner must leave their home and go to places without the arising of attachment. A house is considered a place that generates many desires, much jealousy, and many negative emotions. If you do not have inner detachment, leaving Japan for America, for example, might cause you more troubles and even more emotions. Even if living in America provides more material comfort, what sense does it make to leave Kyoto for San Francisco just to buy another house? You will buy a house, then find a spouse, build a family, and buy a car, ending up just like you were in Kyoto. So what I mean here is that before leaving your home, you must destroy all illusions and detach from all phenomena from within. You need to understand this whether you are in Japan, America, India, or anywhere else. Gradually, we can reduce our heavy attachments. We chain ourselves with attachments. Detachment is an extremely subtle and profound teaching. Detachment must be accompanied by wisdom or inner understanding and must be true non-attachment. Then, external detachment may or may not be cultivated depending on circumstances. You might say, I agree about San Francisco, but what about Nepal? This country lies in the sacred Himalayas and clearly has many holy sites with favorable conditions such as monasteries or high lamas. There are no beautiful roads, vehicles, or big houses, nor any material wealth that makes people attached. Is it the same? Is it better then? This needs consideration. You can go to Nepal or any other place in the Himalayas and live in a cave, leaving behind a civilized country like Japan and living in primitive conditions without electricity, paved roads for cars, not even footpaths, no good food. But if you do not have inner detachment, imagine what will happen. From my experience, there are many things that can make you attached. I have lived in caves many times for long periods and tried to meditate, but I was still attached. There might be a naturally flat rock surface where I placed candles. Other rocks might be rough or rounder, making me attached to that flat rock. I still remember this. I was truly attached to it, which is meaningless. Not just that rock, but the entire cave. I lived in it for months, and now it has become my cave. I began to think, I have such a convenient retreat place. The time I spent in this cave was wonderful. This shows I was attached to the cave. If so, I would be better off in Kyoto or San Francisco. Why go to a cave if the inner attachment remains? Therefore, when in a cave or any remote place, your mind can still wander to Kyoto or the city, maybe to a nightclub or a bar. This means your body is in the cave, but your mind is not. You might be chanting or meditating with your body, but the essence is the mind, the consciousness, the continuous flow of mind streams moving towards nirvana. The body can be cremated or buried in a few years, but that does not matter. If the body is in one place and the mind is elsewhere, this is not the detachment we are discussing or mentioned in the Dharma. When the scriptures say you need to leave your home, it means both your body and mind must practice detachment. You must go to a place without the presence of emotional disturbances. No anger, no attachment, full of peace. The scriptures say, hate the enemy and love friends. These are the two main objects that cause us suffering. Attachment to friends includes family, spouses, while hatred is towards enemies. These emotions arise from your inner attachment, not the house. If you can destroy or reduce these attachments, you can stay at home, no problem. The house is not the trouble. But if you cannot limit these emotions, then usually changing places will support you a lot. This is also my personal experience. Even though attachment still exists, changing places can reduce the involvement that makes you strongly attached to someone or something, reducing the conditions for strong emotional attachment, even if you still have some attachment to this or that. Based on experience, this helps a lot. Practicing non-attachment at home or in a place with many attachment objects or enemies, people who may trigger emotions in you, will create more difficulties in practicing the Dharma. Staying too long in one place with one person in a specific circumstance can disturb a bodhisattva practitioner, and they need to limit establishing relationships that can bind them. Thus, from a spiritual perspective, changing residence often is advisable and favorable for practice. This seems contrary to the worldly way of speaking or thinking. As I said above, we usually enjoy the comfort of a stable life. Parents want their children to have a stable life, so their children often expect that too. Stability, in one sense, means they will seek a wife or husband, then expect a baby to be born, then a house, a job, and that path becomes their chain. They do not realize they are locking themselves with a chain, and then they even happily add a lock to it due to ignorance. This is the typical way of beings in samsara. That is why when getting married, the wedding is always the biggest event in their lives. It is the biggest event because they think it is the best thing. We have a wedding and then wait for a child to be born. From a worldly life perspective, this is great, but spiritually it is meaningless. Perhaps I should not say it is meaningless because it may cause you worry or distress. But indeed, if you examine closely, you will see it is all a chain of samsara. I'm only speaking from personal experience, and you are free to verify if this is true. You do not have to believe in my experiences. However, samsara operates in such a way. This is not something we need to change immediately. It is not an urgent matter, but it is an interesting topic for reflection and discussion. To become a true great practitioner, besides practicing the Buddha's Dharma, we must avoid chaining ourselves, We must avoid any environment that creates conditions for this to happen. Once chained, it is almost impossible to remove it. However, if we have already chained ourselves, we need to know that there is still hope. The Dharma is incredibly skillful, flexible, and miraculous because in every difficulty, we will always have a solution. If we know how to detach from within, we can practice the Dharma in any circumstance. The tranquility of mountains is suitable for serene practice. Far from negative conditions, the two obstacles gradually dissolve. Away from distractions, good actions naturally increase. With a serene mind, the true Dharma is easily grasped. In tranquil mountains, bodhisattvas find refuge. The third verse of the 37 practices of bodhisattvas is particularly important. The first line uses the term yolgen, which means objects that cause defilements or negative emotions. Yul means object, and gen means bad, referring to bad objects. To gradually reduce negative emotions and avoid obstacles, these negative objects need to be isolated. Next, in the second line, namyang means wandering aimlessly, the wild mind without direction. This type of mind needs to be reduced or eliminated so that you can awaken. If you can focus your mind on a fully aware state, the merits of good actions or the merits of virtuous deeds, and the two accumulations of merit and wisdom will certainly increase. The wild, uncontrolled thoughts need to be eliminated, and our minds should be kept free from distractions, maintaining clarity and focus on the Dharma and practice. Through this concentration, the mind becomes clear and undistracted, and you will gain confidence in your practice. In practice, there are three things we need to abandon. First, abandoning negative objects. What we call negative here means those that stir up your emotions. These could be friends, enemies, or other objects. Second is abandoning an uncontrolled mind, and third is the distractions within our minds. These three can be eliminated by living alone in a secluded place in the mountains. In crowded places like cities, it is very difficult to practice because these three obstacles always arise in your mind. In a crowd, you can never abandon them. I should not say never, because if someone has strength and wisdom, they can do this. But abandoning in such adverse conditions is impossible for ordinary beings because these emotions are too wild and difficult to control. We need external support by staying away from noisy cities to meditate, reflect alone, and practice Dharma. Moreover, although there is nothing wrong with being with friends, as I said earlier, a friend can cause trouble for us. Trouble in the sense that their presence can hinder our practice and waste time. If we spend a week with a friend, we waste a week. If it is 2 days, we waste 2 days, or even if it is just 1 day, that day is wasted. Because we have not yet controlled our minds and desires, any external conditions can distract us immediately. Therefore, we need to follow this advice carefully. For those who have reached a high level of practice and can completely control negative emotions, they do not need to isolate themselves in the mountains. One of my teachers said he preferred living in crowds because the noise and all the chaos brought him a lot of support. Support in the sense that he could control everything and develop his own understanding and wisdom. Furthermore, in terms of meditation, it made his wisdom sharper. So he always stayed in crowded and noisy places, preferring to live in city centers where most activities took place. But for us, as we cannot yet perfectly control our body and mind, we need a secluded place for serene practice. Next, we discuss living completely alone. There are two explanations here: living alone physically and living alone mentally. Externally, the ideal environment for a practitioner is a quiet, secluded place. But first, you need to know how to isolate mentally, although in terms of location, a secluded place is very important. In reality, if externally you retreat to the mountains but internally your mind still wanders in the city, it is entirely wrong. As a practitioner on the Bodhisattva Path, you can live anywhere, do anything, but the important thing is not to cling to those places or circumstances. No matter how long we live with family and friends, there will come a day of parting in life and death. All the wealth we toil for in a lifetime, at the moment of death, we leave it all behind. Our body is an inn, the mind is the guest. There will come a day when the guest departs. Therefore, clinging to this life is meaningless. Letting go of attachments is the true practice of a Buddhist. There is a truth about life mentioned here. No matter how long good friends and loved ones live with you, there will come a day when they must leave you. Similarly, no matter what you build, whether a wall or a building, one day they will collapse. Since all harmonious relationships will eventually come to an end, clinging firmly to them is meaningless. This does not mean that we should not care about everything or need to destroy them, but first, we should examine our own attitude of attachment, thinking that they will last forever. In reality, nothing exists, whether it is friendship, jealousy, or anger towards an enemy. Due to anger, you and that enemy can never be friends, but this too is impermanent, like everything else. This year he might be your enemy, but next year he might become a friend. I might be his friend this year, but become hostile to him next year. Who knows what might happen, as anything is possible. Even a couple who have lived harmoniously together for 40 or 50 years, never having argued once, will eventually die. This is similar to our wealth and possessions, which we acquire through much effort, but all are left behind and unnecessary at the moment of death. Perhaps some impermanence will occur. Our wealth will be burned, stolen, or we may unfortunately go bankrupt or face something similar. You may have accumulated countless valuable things through effort in creating material wealth, but they may no longer be ours tomorrow or will be lost in a few years. If lucky, you may keep them for many years, but eventually you will have to part with them. Relatively speaking, having wealth, reputation, or good relationships with parents, children, spouses, and friends is good, but the truth is that you cannot keep these things forever with you. This is very true for your body. This is the thing we cling to the most, but we will also have to part with it. No matter how much we cherish wealth, parents, or friends, we still value our body more. Without it, we cannot exist, but it will also be left behind. The body is like an inn, and the mind is just a guest. When you die, you have no other choice, the inn. The body is like an inn, and the mind is just a guest. When you die, you have no choice, the inn cannot go with you. If someone knows how to let go of attachments in many aspects, that person is the happiest in the world. The way we treat friends, enemies, money, wealth, ourselves, everything is not really good just because we cling blindly. It is better that we no longer behave that way. Saying this does not mean you should not have friends or good relationships with your parents, nor does it mean you should not cherish your life or health. In fact, accumulating material wealth to taking care of health, taking medicine, and exercising are very important because without them, you cannot exist in this world. But what is important here is how you treat them or use them meaningfully. What I mean is that our mind needs to let go of attachment to this life. If someone knows how to let go of attachments in many aspects, that person is the happiest in the world. I can say this with certainty. With the letting go of attachments, this person can bring much happiness to their life. They can help others impartially and selflessly because they have overcome the barriers of attachment. And of course, in terms of practicing the Dharma, when there are no more barriers, there will be no obstacles on the path of practice. Attachment literally means a barrier between you and what you are trying to achieve, a solid wall blocking all aspects and actions of you. Attachment makes you confined and unable to expand your mind. Letting go of attachment will naturally help broaden your understanding. For example, when you face a major problem, it seems no longer serious because it has been let go inside you. Like a computer already programmed, no need to rush. When the time comes, it will operate according to the preset program. Everything will be more peaceful, and life will be better if you practice this. I have a friend who works in Forex trading. I don't know exactly what his job is, but he is my disciple and has practiced this Dharma for many years. A few years ago, he and his partner faced a serious business problem. Their bank went bankrupt, and they lost all their money. Everyone was suffering. The bank manager jumped off the building to commit suicide. Many of his partners had heart attacks, and some died in the hospital. Others went mad and are still being treated. But thanks to deeply practicing this Dharma, until now, he is the only one among them who is at peace. I met him 2 weeks after the incident, and he was still calm, laughing loudly, and quite relaxed. He was not foolish. He still cared for his family and business, did not go to the hospital for treatment or need psychological counseling. What I want to say here is that he practiced meditation and let go of attachment for 20 years. Now he is quite old, but I still did not know the level of practice he had reached until this happened. That shows the difference between someone who does not practice and a true practitioner, an attached person, and one who knows how to let go. It is surprising. Indeed, I was surprised. I was quite hesitant when I saw him because I thought he might have collapsed or suffered a lot or something similar. But no, he still smiled as usual, took me for a walk, chatted as usual, and everything was fine. If you practice letting go with a sincere heart, even with serious problems, you will remain calm and composed as if nothing happened. Others suffer because they do not know. Thus, although experiencing the same circumstances, the attitude of suffering and emotions of each person are completely different. I want to say that those who do not cling to wealth, possessions, body, are the luckiest in the world. There is no reasonable reason to cling because everything, including your body, will have to leave. People may say as an excuse, I need this for that for this, and I like this because of that. There are many things to say and seem reasonable, but such reasons are never satisfactory. We do not need to cling, we can still do our business, take care of our family, and exist without clinging. Therefore, live well and meaningfully. The outside enemy is a projection of the mind's negativity. Evil friends increase the three poisons, harming study, reflection, and meditation. Good deeds and compassion are cut off. Avoid evil friends, O Bodhisattva. Bad friends or external enemies are projections of your own mind's negativity. When associating with such people, reflect on whether your impurities are increasing or decreasing. Examine whether your love and compassion for all beings are growing or diminishing through this contact. If your wisdom and compassion are decreasing, there is something wrong with this relationship. If your anger, greed, arrogance, or jealousy are increasing, this is not good either. These are two ways to evaluate your friend. Not only is it essential to abandon attachments, but it is also crucial to leave behind bad friends. The fifth practice emphasizes the need to quickly abandon bad friends, malevolent companions, or those who mislead us, causing an increase in our hatred, desires, ignorance, confusion, and other negativities. Such companions are considered detrimental or non-constructive. You must distance yourself from them to prevent their negative influence and tendencies from affecting you. In reality, bad friends or external enemies are projections of your own mind's negativity. Instead of pointing out that someone is bad or someone is an enemy, we should target our own mind to combat and resolve the inner enemy and bad companion within us. We must learn how to counter them. We might say, this person is making me angry, greedy, and ignorant. Perhaps I should avoid them quietly without saying a word. But even after abandoning that person, you should still vow, I must develop my own strength to combat internal negativities. If I neglect dealing with my internal negativities, sooner or later, I will encounter similar friends in life, and I will never be free of enemies and bad friends. Thus, for a bodhisattva practitioner, it is crucial to avoid bad friends. This needs to be practiced very strictly because we often enjoy their company. If they come to us with a fierce look and a scary demeanor, we may think they are terrible and avoid them. But unfortunately, they can be very charming, attractive, and evoke sympathetic negative emotions in us. In such cases, you can easily be deceived and fail to recognize the bad friend or companion. The truth will eventually reveal itself. At some point, we will recognize our malicious companion, but it might take a few years and sometimes be too late. Therefore, you must rigorously scrutinize your relationships from the beginning. The only way to test is to reflect on whether your impurities are increasing or decreasing when you associate with such people. Examine whether your love and compassion for all beings are growing or diminishing through this contact. If your wisdom and compassion are decreasing, there is something wrong with this relationship. If your anger, greed, arrogance, or jealousy are increasing, this is not good either. These are two ways to evaluate your friend.